hours ago, Moscow murder suspect Brian Kohberger faced a judge for the first time in Latah County. He faces first-degree murder charges, accused of killing 4 University of Idaho students. Just hours ago, officials also released the affidavit that lays out new evidence. It also reveals a new timeline of events. We now know how investigators say they were able to link Kohberger's DNA to the gruesome crime scene.
Hey, it's Sully, Jones, and Johnson, and this is Kitchen Table Research, where we do the research so you don't have to. Today is our first Shorties episode, which means that we are just going to brief you on shorter cases or cases that are currently taking place in the media. So today we're talking about the Moscow murders. We have pictures and maps per usual on our social media pages, and at this point we're basically across all platforms. You know where to find us on Instagram. Search us on Facebook just using Kitchen Table Research Podcast. And Johnson has some exciting news.
Yes, I do. I have put together a whole gosh darn website for Kitchen Table Research. So it's going to be your one-stop shop to find all things KTR. You can listen right there. There's photos, and about us page, and about our label. We have a merch page where you can see our description of the merch that will be coming out. You can subscribe to our monthly digest, all sorts of things. So go check it out because it took me a long time.
It's a beautiful website, and we have to give major kudos to Johnson because she did a really good job. So go, Johnson. It's your birthday. Until March 1st, if you go on to Spotify and Apple specifically, and you go rate, review, and subscribe, and send us a message to our email, kitchen.table.research@gmail.com, and let us know, I will send you a special gift for my very own spooky collection. I have all kinds of things that I've been collecting for years and years, and it is your time to receive a special gift from the studio. So if you go do those things, let me know, and I will send you a special package. I think that kind of wraps up our intro. So today we are talking about the Idaho murders, and Jones is going to be our speaker today.
Well, I also want to say thank you to Johnson for the website. It is fantastic.
Whoop, whoop.
Whoop, whoop. Today I want to talk about the Idaho murders. I'm going to call it the Idaho 4. I've been following it since it first happened, and I'm going to kind of go through our usual presentation outline. The University of Idaho is located in Moscow, Idaho. It's an agricultural and research school. The town's around 25,000, and about 11,000 of those are students. Several national sororities and fraternities are active on campus, but it doesn't appear that they live in their chapter houses. They live in dorms and off-campus houses. Washington State University is about 10 miles away from Idaho, across the state line, into a town named Pullman, Washington. The two universities sit miles apart, only separated by the Washington-Idaho line. Let's talk about the victims first. Madison Mogan, she was known as Maddie, 21 years old. She was expected to graduate in May of 2023.
2023.
Yeah, 2023. 2023.
So she was really close to graduation.
She was. She was described as offbeat. She was funny. She always said, "Don't ever let me go hungry because I get angry." She was focused. She was dedicated to her schoolwork. She was on the dean's list. She was a Pi Phi. She was a senior. She loved her boyfriend. They were broken up right now, but she did love her boyfriend. She worked at the Mad Greek restaurant. Everyone liked her. She has an on and off again boyfriend whose name is Jake. And like I said, everybody believed they would end up together. She is best friends with Kaylee Gonsalves. since sixth grade. Both girls grew up in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, where Kaylee and Maddie had been best friends since sixth grade. Small town, everyone knows everyone, quaint little town. Next is Kaylee Gonsalves. She's 21 years old. She graduated in 12 of 22, and she is on her way to Texas for her first job. She had gone home to her family and then came back to IU for the weekend to see Maddie and to show off her new car, which is a Range Rover, I believe. She comes from a large, seemingly good family. She loves hard. She had a fire in her. She liked to play pranks. She was strong, beautiful, and dedicated. When she comes up to IU to show off her new car, her room's already been packed. So the best friends are going to sleep in Maddie's bed after a night out celebrating. Kaylee has a Labradoodle named Murphy, and she brings him with her, and we're going to talk some about the dog later. The next victim is Xana Kernodle. She's 20 years old. She was a sports queen. She loved sports, volleyball, soccer, track, gymnast. She worked at the Texas Roadhouse when she was going to high school. She's also a Pi Phi. She loved music, her dog, and Ethan. Ethan, her boyfriend, Chapin, is 20 years old. He was a freshman. He was the oldest of fraternal triplets who were born 1 minute apart. They were a close-knit family and had returned from a vacation in Hawaii before school started. His other siblings go to IU as well. He played soccer, track. He was in Sigma Chi fraternity. He was nice and kind and always seemed to have a smile on his face. These kids had such huge potential.
Yeah, it really seems like all of them kind of had a good head on their shoulders. Seems like they had mostly good families. School was going well for them. It's a major travesty what happens to these 4 kids.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about parents. There's quite a conglomeration of parents here, so let me try and sort this out to you. Maddie's mom is Karen Laramie, and her stepdad is Scott Laramie. Her dad is Benjamin, and her stepmother is Corey Hatrock.
So she had basically 4 parents.
She had basically 4 parents, and then she got a bonus set of parents because since she and Kaylee Gonsalves were so close, she considered Kaylee's mom and dad part of her family. When Karen Laramie called Dad Benjamin, he was in the movie theater. She left a message and said, "Call me immediately." He got up and he texted her and he said, "I'm in the movie. I'll call you back soon." She immediately recalled him, and at that point he said, "I knew something was wrong," because she would have never done that. So she told him about the deaths, and they cried together on the phone. I don't know whether Ben's wife was with him. She's undergoing some drug charges in Idaho as well, so I don't know where she was on the day. Kaylee's dad is Steve. Her mom is Christy. She has 3 sisters and a brother, and lots of nieces and nephews and grandparents and aunts and uncles. Her mom, Christy, has not particularly been featured. She wants to grieve privately. I thought that was Karen Laramie. Am I wrong?
Keep going. I'll double check.
Xana, her father's Jeff. He owns a construction company located in Mariposa, Arizona. Her biologic mother is Kara. She has a brother, Elijah, and a sister, Jasmine. Kara and Jeff are divorced. And Anna asks a question about Arizona and Kara in Idaho. I believe that's true. He lives in Arizona and Kara is now in Idaho. I think she's awaiting some sentencing on some drug charges of her own. Xana and Jeff, her dad, spoke to each other around midnight. He had seen her the week before, done a little bit of work on the house, including fixing the lock on the downstairs door. So as far as we knew, everything was up to date around the house, except for the sliding glass door that never locked. Kara has a drug charge pending, and her legal case is going to become important to the story. We'll explain that in a few minutes. Ethan, his mom is Stacy, his dad is Jim. His middle triplet went to U of I. His brother Hunter also went to U of I. It's hard to tell the boys apart because they look so much like Ethan. Obviously, the girl's the girl, but whatever. They live in Washington. They don't live in Idaho. It's believed that Hunter, that third triplet, is one of the first to enter the house before the police arrive. He's just minutes away from the house, and somebody from the house calls him, and he arrives quickly. Mom says during the interview that the siblings were both on the phone with the news that Ethan was dead.
So, why do you think Hunter went over to the house? Do we know? Like, had he just not
We
heard
don't.
from his brother?
We don't know anything at all except what's been released, and that is nothing. There is a rumor that one of the girls that survived called him on her cell phone and said, "Get over here. There's something going on." And that's why they think he was there first.
Yeah, I had one. I know we'll get into it maybe a little later about the surviving roommates, but I was curious if maybe one of them had made the call to Hunter knowing he was so close.
Well, and remember, the surviving roommates are not talking, okay?
Yeah.
And they probably won't talk until the trial because this has all been kept under really close wraps by the police and the FBI and everybody else. So I don't think we're going to know much else until this puppy goes to trial.
Which is like at the end of June.
Late June. Let's talk a little bit about the cars. The cars that you see in the picture are parked behind the yellow crime scene tape. The door that you see there that's got the wreath on it is the downstairs door that has the digital lock on it. There were 5 roommates in the home. Kaylee had just bought a Range Rover, and you catch a glimpse of it in front of the house. It's hard to identify the other cars in front of the house, although I can make out a blue Honda Civic. Don't know whose car that is, though. Surveillance cameras catch a white Elantra that goes by the front of their house 3 times between 3 and 4 a.m. There's no parking available, so the white Elantra makes several rounds around the block or around the area. He comes back in for the 4th time right at 4 a.m. You see him go by the front of the house. You see him back up, make a turn, and go out of the street by the house. He obviously finds a parking place somewhere, but it's out of the sight of any security cameras at this time. Our question is?
Well, yeah, okay, so do you think he knew where the camera is? It seems like he had been scouting the house for quite a few months. So do you think he knew where the cameras were, A, and he had an hour while he's driving around before these murders occur. So he has an hour to really think about what he's going to do, which just in trial is going to come out as premeditation.
Sure.
So what do you think about the cameras?
I mean, not only is the hour to find a parking spot premeditation, but also he was paying since August? Just driving by their house all the time. So
Starting
it's not
August.
Just an hour that he's thinking about this, which is sort of spur of the moment, but it's months of planning.
Yeah. I agree. That's creepy.
It is creepy.
Well, and if you think he'd been scouting the house out for a month, he'd be able to find a damn parking spot, but I don't think that. I think Brian.
I think there's so little parking among those student houses and those dorms, just like there were on any college campus you go to. So I don't think that's unusual.
I also don't think that Brian was the brightest bulb in the bunch.
Well, I think he's pretty bright. I think he's got. I don't think he has any common sense, is what I think.
Yeah, which I think is a common problem for doctoral students,
right?
Including myself.
And serial killers.
So starting in August, the police can identify 12 times that he drove by the house before the murders occurred. He takes it. He drives over from Washington, and it's a short route. It's just a straight road between the two towns. It's about a 10-minute drive from where he lives. So 11 out of those 12 times was in the middle of the night. So again, that points to that premeditation of trying to figure out if there's lots of traffic, or, how he's going to plan his escape and what's he going to do and some of that. Because it does appear that he's been stalking the house for a while. I don't know. The police have said that he was not stalking anybody in the house. Again, I think that's going to change as it comes out in trial, because I think maybe he was.
I have a question. So, Washington State campus and the Idaho State campus are both public colleges. So,
yes.
Even though Brian is in like a doctorate program, the Washington State University, is that what the name of that university is called over there? That would be like a public university where
correct,
you can get a bachelor's, but he had just been going there for his doctorate because he had just started there, correct?
Correct.
That's kind of odd to have two huge campuses kind of right next to each other.
It is kind of weird. I think the University of Idaho was founded in 1962, and I think Washington State is founded after that. But, if you've got money in a state, you want to spend it towards education, you got to have a university. So there you go.
Well, we're all about upper education.
We are.
You guys can't see, but the woman that just said we're all about upper education is currently scratching her belly for all of us to see.
Man, I'm having allergies. I've been so itchy.
Let's give you some background of what we know about him. Kohberger has a bachelor's in psychology. In May of 22, he graduates with his master's from DeSalle University, which is a private Catholic university in Pennsylvania, with a master's in criminal justice. He's accepted into a criminal forensic PhD program at Washington State University in Pullman, Washington. He drives across country in his mother's white Elantra to start classes at WSU in June. He had Kathleen Ramsland as a teacher in his master's study. She is an expert in BTK and has the class had studied BTK. Rumor is that Brian Kohberger and BTK have talked. Some of us think that might be true. Some of us don't think that's true.
So, it is possible, even though we don't have evidence, like, especially for people on death row, there's a lot of resources that they have. Like, they have email, they have social media, I listen to a podcast that are hosted by inmates in prison. So, it's definitely possible. And on the other hand, I saw his daughter, Carrie Rawson, and I'm only naming her here because she's very public about her relationship with BTK.
Which that's her dad.
And yes. And BTK's daughter, Carrie, I saw her at CrimeCon Vegas last April. And she has not been in communication with him in a long time because obviously he showed his true colors to her after he was arrested and all that went down. But I do think if she did know something, she probably would have informed the authorities because she's very much in the world of, advocates and helping the police and things like that.
For victims, yeah.
Yes.
And just FYI, we are going to CrimeCon all together as a team.
In Orlando.
Miami.
Yes, we are. So Brian applies for position with the Pullman Police Department, and he wants to be a consultant to teach officers about using digital evidence in their cases.
Well, he obviously wasn't very good considering that they tracked him through digital evidence, but okay.
Yeah. He attends his PhD classes in Washington State, and he does participate in classroom discussion. His classmates say that he contributes to discussions, but he always likes to be correct.
What a narcissist.
After the murders occur, he is not as animated during class discussion, but does still attend class. We don't know for sure that this is his thesis, but one of the social media sites, and I think it might have been Reddit, he asks for participants to participate in a study that he's doing on how emotions and psychological traits influence a killer's decision when making and committing a crime. He asks for comments from criminals about how it feels before, during, and after murdering someone. Don't know what kind of replies he might have gotten from those queries, so I'm sure it will come out later.
Well, and I'm on Reddit quite a bit, and I have not seen that they have found his Reddit account. And Reddit is moderated to a certain degree, and somebody might have not like taken everything down, but they might have pulled that off the public forums to use as either hold back
I
information.
think that's exactly what's happened, because that's been reported in the media that all of his social media accounts have been taken down.
Right.
Somebody said that they thought his name on Reddit was Papa Rogers.
Ew.
I don't know if that's true or not. He came from a religious upbringing. His father is a maintenance worker at the school, and his mom was a special needs teacher. He does have an older sister. I actually think he's got two older sisters. It's unclear how close to his mother he was, but he's got a former classmate, Deja Mom, that remembered his mother as the most warm-hearted, kind individual.
And they're talking about Brian's mom there, that she was
They're talking about Brian's mom there. He was chubby in his early teens, but he slimmed down during late high school. There's also reports of drug abuse, including heroin during high school, but apparently there's no drug use now. It's unclear if he went to rehab. I do know that he went to rehab.
That just seems so crazy. Like, he comes from what seems like a good family, yet he gets hooked on heroin in high school. I just feel like there's something underlying there with the parents that we haven't quite uncovered
there may
yet.
be, and of course it'll come out.
It kind of reminds me of like the laundry case where his parents seemed, nice, but they covered for Brian for quite a bit there.
Right. Oh, Brian Landry?
Yeah, did I call him Laundry?
You did. I was like, who is is it like in a laundromat happened something?
You know what? I don't care about these killers enough to get their names right. I mean, who cares?
Fuck 'em.
I'm all about the victims, just like Joan said in the beginning. This is about the victims. This isn't about him.
So to our knowledge, he doesn't smoke or drink in excess.
Not sure if he's completely sober, huh?
Not sure. In public, it's been reported that if he's sitting in a bar, he tries to come on strong to the women. There was a manager at a brew pub in Pennsylvania that had to talk to him about his inappropriateness of his conversation with women. He is a strict vegan to the point that no animal product must touch his cooking utensils.
Yeah, I mean, I had heard that his mom, he made his mom buy a whole separate set of utensils, cooking utensils, pots, pans, plates, etc., so that no meat products were ever, cross-contaminated into his food.
Which I think says quite a bit about his issues with control.
Yeah, and quite a bit about his issues with some OCD going on, too.
I think it's funny that his last name is Burger, and he's a vegan.
You find humor in everything.
You know what? I do.
There is a restaurant in Idaho Springs. It's called the Mad Greek, and Maddie and Xana work as waitresses. People say they saw Brian in there at least twice, but it's unknown whether the girls were working their shifts that time. He does order a vegan pizza while he's in the Mad Greek. Beginning in August, there are 12 cell phone pings around the murder house from that closest tower. 11 of them are late at night. So the house is not on the beaten path, and it's unusual to have that many pings.
Again, like, isn't he supposed to be like a digital investigator? I mean, come on, dude.
Yeah, agreed.
Like, do your homework.
Is he an involuntary celibate, which I have read on social media? That's called an incel, an abbreviation of those two words.
Yeah, I feel like it's such an easy way to rationalize crimes against women to just call someone an incel. But I mean, really, when you think about it, with so many, like most crimes of this specific kind of crime, like serial killers or sexually motivated crimes, are against women. And it's not because they're incels, like that's an easy way out. It's because they feel like they are owed something from the world. They have issues with control. You know, I wouldn't necessarily link all of these people to, oh, I don't have sex and now I'm mad about it and gonna kill somebody. You know, it's just a way for people to feel safe.
Yeah, and there's I was just reading about a couple of quote unquote incel crimes, and one of them was perpetrated by a man named Elliot Rogers, and that was in Santa Barbara. And I believe that was a mass shooting where 10 people died. And later on, they coined him as a quote unquote incel. And then there was also a massive attack in somewhere in Canada, and his name was Alex Minassian. And again, he was arrested and labeled an incel. And so I kind of agree with Johnson. I feel like it's a word that kind of makes it seem like, oh, well, they were an incel, so it's fine, when it's the problem.
Yeah, it's
is
just
much
a subgroup
deeper.
of people we don't have to worry about.
Right.
When it's like, no, the men committing these crimes are just, you know, they're fucked up.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, it's like a serial killer is a serial killer. You can call him an incel, you can call him an asshole. At the
You
end
can call
of the
them mommy
day,
problems.
at the end of the day, they are harming mostly other women, you know. And it does go back to like the patriarchy, and I just think it's so easy to just throw the word incel out there when there's so many different layers to what we're talking about here.
Well, it's also been rumored, and again, we're not going to know this until the trial, that BK had messaged one of the girls on social media. Now, Kaylee Gonzalez's father said he has torn apart her social media trying to see if he can find anything, and he does not think that it was Kaylee that was targeted, if one of the girls was targeted.
I think that his main target was Maddie. So Maddie she worked at the Mad Greek. And I think anybody that's an Instagram user knows that if somebody sends you a message on Instagram and they're not a friend of yours, it's kind of hard to find that section.
I found one the other day that was like 3 years old. And I was like, how did I even get to this page?
I know.
And I'm not
it's kind of
80
hidden.
years old.
So I think, like Jones said, they haven't come out with this information, but I think that if Steve has torn apart Kaylee's, and when we get into the crime, we'll touch on this again, but Maddie is the one that worked at the Mad Greek, and I think he really had his sights set on Maddie, but...
Well, I also think it's dangerous to assume that there was a specific target at all, because I really think his motive was to see how it felt. And I think maybe he targeted the house.
Yeah.
We cannot, without further evidence, we can't assume there's a specific person he had in mind.
Right. That's my personal conjecture that's not been released by the media, or like we said, I mean, we might never find this out. And information we will find out, it'll be within the next few years, because we do know just a few days, weeks ago, that he did waive his right to a speedy trial. So the trial will take years to unfold.
Right.
Should I talk about speedy trials real quick, or are we
Sure.
good?
Yeah, please
Sure.
do.
Or
Because
save
we
it for
have a
Darlie?
speedy trial in the Darlie Routier case that we're kind of in the middle of right now. So go ahead.
So I think people really misunderstand what a speedy trial means. So it's in the Constitution or the Bill of Rights or whatever, you know, the old timey stuff. It's in there that you have the right to a speedy trial, which all it means is you have the right to not remain in prison for years waiting to be tried. There's nothing like him waiving his right to speedy trial does not mean if he didn't, he would be tried in 2 weeks. You know, there's just not enough time. The system's overloaded. So it really doesn't mean what people tend to think it means. Like it's going to take 6 months regardless of whether he waived his rights or not.
Right.
Well, and really, in a criminal case like this where you have several victims, I just don't think we're going to touch on this in Darlie Routier, but I don't think that. I think the speedy trial thing is like an archaic law where, like, back in the day, like you said, they didn't want people sitting in prison for years just because they were like, oh, we don't have a judge, or like the judge died.
Right. Or
Like-
they had a traveling circuit of judges who would be in the town,
Right.
oh, in 2 years from now.
But I definitely don't think that you should be able to have a speedy trial when you're on the line for a capital murder case.
We're going to talk about Ann Taylor. She has been appointed as Brian Kohberger's defense attorney. She is also the defense attorney for Corey Hatrock and Kara Northington. And both of them, technically, there's a conflict of interest because she can't be all three of their attorneys, since two of her clients have daughters that died in this murder. So she apparently has or been told that she would sit on the Brian Kohberger case, and they'll assign other defense attorneys to Corey Hatrock and Kara Northington.
And Kara Northington has been pretty public that she feels betrayed by her lawyer for turning around and taking the case of her daughter's murder, which I understand that. But Johnson, can you give us a little bit about how the DA works and how you have to be like a special type of lawyer to try a capital murder case, correct?
I'm sorry, is Ann Taylor the prosecution or the defense?
The defense.
She's the defense.
I think we talked about off the record that, you know, it's a rural-ish area and there's only so many defense attorneys to go around. And so Kara feeling betrayed is totally understandable. Like, why couldn't you just pass this off to someone else? But A, there's a small pool in this area of defense attorneys. And B, if she is a court-appointed defender, then it's an even smaller pool because I'm assuming Brian could not afford an attorney of his own volition.
Right.
So attorneys have to volunteer to be put on that list to be court appointed. And so you're taking a small pool and making it even smaller. So it does make sense that Anne would withdraw from Kara's case because, you know, there's probably no one else to do this.
Right.
I was going to say it might not have really been Ann Taylor's choice at the end of the day.
Right. I agree with that too. Well, let's talk a little bit about the house. The house is a 3-story house, and on each story there are 2 single bedrooms. And in between those bedrooms, there's a separate bath. So there are 6 bedrooms total, and I think there's a possible half bath by the kitchen. One of those bedrooms is empty because the girl didn't come to school for the fall. On the bottom floor, and that's the picture where you see with the wreath still on the front door, Bethany Frank's bedroom, and she is the survivor, is away from the door and underneath Xana's bedroom. The other bedroom's currently empty. Okay. So Bethany's the only one on the bottom floor. On the second floor, there's 2 more bedrooms. Dylan lives in one bedroom, and Dylan's bedroom is right underneath Maddie's. Xana's bedroom is a short distance on the back side of the kitchen on the second floor. There's a sliding glass door adjacent to the kitchen. And you go up the stairs again, and on the third floor, there are 2 more bedrooms, Maddie and Kaylee's. And those pictures are on social media.
Yeah, we're going to try and get you guys the best possible map. I've seen some 3D renditions of the way that the house is set up, but I do have a question. Is the sliding glass door on the second level and there's just, okay, that's what I thought. Because the house kind of sits on like a hill.
Yeah. And the front door is on the bottom.
Right.
And also, just as a reminder, you can go to the new website to use these photos.
That's right. Kaylee had already moved out of her bedroom, and she was on her way to Texas for a new job. So she was going to spend Christmas with her family and then head on down to Texas. She's already emptied her room out. So I'm guessing that there were no sheets on the bed because she was sleeping with Maddie that night. She has a dog named Murphy, who's a Labradoodle. Everybody knows and loves. Kaylee and her longtime ex-boyfriend, not to be confused with Maddie's boyfriend, Jake, they own Murphy together. So Casey comes back to the IU campus for the weekend with Murphy to see her best friend, Maddie, and to show off the new car she had. So both girls were in Maddie's room together. Maddie's room is directly above Dylan's. Did y'all get that?
So Maddie's room is directly above Dylan's, and Xana's room is directly above Bethany's?
Correct.
Okay.
And that begs the question, why did nobody hear anything?
Yeah.
Or did they hear something and we just don't know because they're all dead or not talking?
Or as someone
there's
who's
also a gag order.
And there's also the gag order.
And I was going to say also somebody that's lived in a house with a bunch of roommates in college. There's just a lot of shit that goes on. People are coming in and out all day. Right. I mean, you know, it's might be one of those things where they're just used to people coming in and out of the house. And this night in particular was a Saturday night. So everybody's out drinking.
Yes. They were all home by 2:00 in the morning though. Let's talk about the entrances and exits. The downstairs front door, again, it's still got the wreath on it. It's controlled by a quick lock that requires numbers to be punched in for it to open. Xana's dad said he'd been there that weekend before, and he had worked on that box set. So I think it must have been functional and working on the night of the murders.
So it's just like one of those like Airbnb codes that you...
Right, where you get that quick code for and then you can get in. There's a sliding glass door that's on the second floor that sits directly away from the eating area. You can see it. If you're looking at pictures, you can see the fire pit that's outside that door, and it was seldom locked.
Okay, so someone who has a sliding glass door, let me just tell you guys, safety first. Sliding glass doors are extremely easy to break into. They're more latched than locked. They're very easy to pry open. You can see a lot through them. So just as your safety coordinator, I've assigned myself right now, please go get a dowel rod or a metal that you can find them on Amazon. Just, type in safety bar for sliding glass door. Put some curtains on that door so people can't just see in to a large part of your house.
Right. And this is not meant to be victim blaming in any way, shape, or form.
No.
Like, obviously, we would love to hold murderers responsible and peeping toms and go, hey, don't do that. That's on you. But obviously, that's probably not going to happen. So safety first.
Safety first.
And we're totally not judging any of these women for going out partying, having a good time. That is part of the college experience. They are allowed to go out and drink. They were safe that night. They did not drive home. You know,
They have a right to party and party safely, and Brian is the one we're judging here.
yeah.
Koberger enters the home through the sliding glass door, which must not have been locked because there are no signs of forced entry. So it must have been unlocked. What seems to me to be the most logical chain of events is everybody was out that night with dates and friends. Ethan and Xana were at a Sigma Chi party. There's some discussion of where they spent the next couple of hours. Did they go to another party? If so, nobody's come forward. Nobody's come forward that we know of.
But remember, there's that gag order, so.
Right. And so by 2:00, all the kids are home in the house. I think they probably had some drinks. You can see them on a closed caption cam when they're buying grub food. And Kaylee seems a little bit unsteady on her feet.
Again, it's like.
I don't like that.
And it's not like she's alone either.
Right. It's just,
Right.
It's part of the college experience. Have fun. You know, like we said, this is not their fault. This is on Brian.
So Kaylee and Maddie arrive home. They crawl into bed on Maddie's bedroom, which is on the left side of the third floor. And the dog, Murphy, is either in bed with them or besides the bed. I cannot see that Kaylee would have dropped Murphy off in her old bedroom, closed the door on him, because I'm sure she's used to sleeping with Murphy every night. So I don't think that's the way it happened, but it could be.
Yeah. I mean, my husband is allergic to dogs, and guess what? Our dog sleeps right beside us every night.
Exactly. So at 4:00, the Elantra is in the road area. We already know he has to back up. He finds a parking place and ultimately finds that parking place and comes to the sliding. At 4:00, Xana takes a DoorDash delivery at the ground level entrance. That driver has been cleared. At 4:09, Koberger enters the home through an unlocked sliding door. So in 10 minutes, he knifes to death 4 people.
You're breaking up a little bit, but I just want to reiterate from studying these crimes that we've been doing recently, these crimes happen so fast. I mean, yogurt shop, 40 minutes. Las Cruces, 20. The case, Darlie Routier case we're working on right now, seems like it could have happened in 10, 15, 20 minutes. It's amazing at how fast these crimes can be committed.
It's very common for no one to hear anything.
Right. Especially in a stabbing.
Mm-hmm.
So, Jones, go ahead and pick up at 4:17. We hear Murphy bark.
They hear a dog barking. We assume it's Murphy, but we don't know that for 100% sure yet. Brian Koberger's white Elantra is again seen at 4:19 speeding out of the neighborhood. Okay? So what I think happens is he creeps upstairs, he opens Kaylee's room door, and nobody's inside of it. Unless Murphy's inside of it, but I really don't think Murphy's inside of it.
Why do you think he went to the third level first? Is that like a tactical thing? Well, I'm just thinking
I
if
think
he
it
went
does make sense. If you start at the top floor,
Right.
you have control of that stairwell.
Right.
You can see if anyone is coming up. Whereas if you're at the bottom, you might not immediately see if someone's coming down.
I agree with you, Johnson. I think it does make sense. I think we're on to something there. But go ahead, Jones.
So he opens Maddie's door, and both Maddie and Kaylee are laying in the bed. Murphy follows the intruder, or he gets carried across the hall into Kaylee's room, and it shuts the door. So the killer removes that potential threat, but he doesn't harm the dog. This is when Murphy barks the first time, okay? Remember, Murphy's not a mean dog. He loves everybody. He's used to people in the house, and he's very socialized. So I think he barks once, and that's it. Dylan says that she hears either Maddie or Kaylee say, "There's somebody here." And Dylan hears this from her in her bedroom, which is directly below Maddie's room. BK unsheathes the knife. He crawls in top of the bed and he stabs both girls. He leaves the sheath next to them in the bed with some trace DNA on the metal snap. He unsheaths the knife. He leaves the sheath next to Kaylee's legs. He stabs them to death.
And so we, us three, through our Crime Con membership, we watched Joseph Scott Morgan, I believe is his name. He has a podcast called Body Bags. Joseph Scott Morgan, I believe. They said that the DNA that was found was sweat. And so it means Kohberger had really worked himself up into a...
Probably sweat.
A probably sweat.
Yeah, that's what we've heard.
So he comes down the stairs. He's holding up a bloody knife, and he is covered in blood. He realizes Xana's up, and she's awake. She's eating her DoorDash, and at 4:12, TikTok records her as being on the phone.
Like, what a life. That is my dream day. Like, you go out and party a little bit, you're with your boyfriend, and you just get some DoorDash and hang out on TikTok. It's a beautiful night.
I know.
And it's such a shame that it ended so terribly.
I was going to say, dude, she's living her best life.
The intruder, Dylan says she hears somebody say, "Don't worry, I'm here to help."
Again, it just sends
And
chills.
he has to walk into the room and stab Xana. She falls to the floor, and that's the thud that Dylan says she hears. The coroner says that Xana fought back because she does have some defensive wounds. Xana's boyfriend, Ethan, is also in the bedroom, and the coroner states he suffered some deep, slicing defensive wounds. Was Ethan asleep? Don't know.
Well, and I kind of think... I think that Brian didn't think that Ethan was there. I think he thought it was going to be Maddie, Dylan, Bethany, and Xana. If he really was stalking and casing out this house, he might have thought that Kaylee was gone. And so there would only be 4 women in the house. And I don't think he expected there to be another man there. And as we said, it seems like Ethan fought back pretty hard.
And the rumors are that Ethan had more significant injuries than the others. So that tells me he fought back. There is some report that he might have died in the hallway, but the belief is that Ethan died last.
Go ahead, Johnson. You were going to say something?
I was going to say he must have known that Kaylee was gone, because why would he risk putting Murphy in a bedroom that he doesn't know is unoccupied?
Right.
That's a good point, too. And the reason, I touched on this earlier, the reason that I believe that Maddie was his main target is because the coroner's report also came back saying that Maddie had been stabbed quite a bit more than any of the other victims. Then again, she could have been the first victim, and he could have started getting tired. I mean, if you think about sitting on top of somebody and stabbing them multiple times, that's a workout. I mean, and then we find that there's sweat DNA that we believe is left. And so I think he has worked himself up into quite a cardio.
We've got Maddie, Kaylee, Xana, and Ethan are now dead. To exsanguinate takes about 3 minutes. Okay. So if they were alive after he finished the stabbing, it did not take them long to succumb to those injuries.
And maybe Ethan was trying to crawl to Dylan or somewhere to let somebody know.
Maybe, yeah. So the intruder comes out of Xana's room. He passes by Dylan's cracked door opening because she's opened her door. And she is standing far enough in that doorway that the intruder can't see her. So you have to make kind of a left-hand turn to go out that sliding glass door. And so he makes that turn. I don't think he ever sees her. She sees him, but he can't see her, and he goes right out the sliding glass door. So he's got to be covered in blood. He's wearing a dark clothes mask and gloves, so maybe his bloody clothing's just not that evident. His heart must be racing from adrenaline and physical exertion. It's likely he drips sweat all over the scene. There's a footprint found by the sliding glass door in the snow. But I've also read that was a bloody footprint was also found by Dylan's door. So I'm not sure exactly what I got there.
And it says that it was like the sole of a van shoe.
One of those Vans pull-ons.
And I heard that in Dylan's, the description that she gave police, she talks about him wearing a balaclava or a black ski mask, and that he had these bushy eyebrows hanging out of him. Ugh. And then he's wearing Vans. So quite an outfit.
Yeah, and Dylan reports that he had on gloves, so we don't think there's going to be fingerprints found. So far, findings of the physical evidence has not been released. We do think it's one knife, so both the intruder and the knife must be covered in blood and DNA.
And like we had said, we kind of found out through listening to some experts that the DNA they found was sweat, but in a lot of cases
They think was sweat.
They think was sweat, which is gross because there's another substance that looks very much like that. But I don't think there's been any reports that there was sexual assault.
There were none of these victims were sexually assaulted.
But it's just common in stabbings that once that knife gets bloody, it becomes slippery, and it's very easy for the intruder to nick themselves, even through... We know that he was wearing black nitrile gloves because he's seen on CCTV at Walmart buying them. After
Brian gets out of the neighborhood, he doesn't go the short way back home, the little 10-minute way. He goes down a highway, across a highway, back up a highway, back to where he lives. That takes him about an hour. At about, I think it's 4:45, they can pick up his cell phone ping again. And about 5:30, he arrives home at his apartment in Pullman. So there's where your hour goes. That he leaves the house at 4:19. He arrives back at his own home at 5:30.
And it says that 5:30 he turns his cell phone back on.
Right, but I think it was more along the 4:45, right?
Okay.
As he's driving back home.
Okay.
At 9:00 a.m., his cell phone pings in the girl's neighborhood. So he came back to the scene to observe what is going on. Except no one's been notified yet. Or maybe he comes back to determine if he left the knife sheath outside. Did he realize he'd left the sheath? Or not? I would think so. He's got a bloody knife he's trying to put in a sheath to get away. So I think he recognizes that something's happened to his sheath.
Yeah.
I also find it extremely weird that a killer walks into a house with a knife in a sheath. He has to take it out of his sheath to kill somebody. Why didn't he just walk into the house with the knife?
I know, that's so weird.
I think that's very strange.
And it just goes back to, you can't always determine human behavior. People want to be able to explain everything, but people do weird shit all the time, man.
Yeah, they do.
I mean, we have these questions come up time and time again in our cases as to why would they have done that,
So at 11:58, okay.
So this is 8 hours after the murder?
Almost 8 hours after the murders.
Okay.
Somebody from in the house picked up Dylan's cell phone and called EMS. It was not Dylan, okay? EMS picks the phone up, and there are several people trying to talk to the EMS operator at the same time. Don't know what they said, probably won't for a while. EMS gets there first, and we waited for the Moscow police before entering the home. And I think that's because the friends that had come over to the house are now outside the house waiting for EMS. They're somber. They already know what they're going to find. I think they already had a clue that the girls were dead or that their friends were dead. And so the survivors, what we think happened is the survivors called friends over before they make a 911 call, because they said there was an unconscious person on the second floor. I don't know whether that's Ethan or is that Dylan, because she was so frightened and hyperventilated. And of course, there's a lot of people asking about why Dylan and the roommate waited so long to make that EMS call.
Well,
Now,
I think Bethany was just asleep. I don't think she heard anything. I don't think she knew what was going on. It's noon. You're a college student. It's Sunday. I think she just is asleep. Now, Dylan, we know, saw him. So I think we're gonna touch on it. Oh, it looks like maybe let's just go ahead and get into it right here. So we believe, us three, KTR, that Dylan had some sort of trauma response, and that's why it took her so long. And Johnson, who does a lot of profiling, I want you to kind of explain some of that for us.
So, I mean, the typical responses that you hear about are fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And this doesn't really come from my profiling, but from personal experience, you know, I grew up in a very abusive home. I've had other trauma happen outside of that. And my response always is to freeze. I mean, even now, if Sully is like, hey, where's my, you didn't meet the deadline, I'm just going to freeze and ignore her. So, I mean, it's very reasonable to me that Dylan would have, I mean, let's assume her trauma is from family abuse. Gaslighting is very common. So she's going to believe that she's overreacting. She's going to rationalize away what she saw.
Or feel blame.
Yes, or feel like, anyways, that's just, it's reasonable to me that she would have just froze and did wait that long. Because, I mean, if I heard Sully, if I saw someone coming out of Sully's house, I would be like, I'm going to bed. I don't have the capacity to deal with this.
so it's really, I read this today and I put it in what I wanted to say. The survivors, who are Dylan and Bethany, got an angel tattoo. Now, a couple of those girls were Pi Phis, and Pi Phi symbol, logo, meaning has always been angels, okay? And you can see an angel wing on Maddie's thigh, I think it is. But they went and got...
Oh, like she had a tattoo of it?
She had a tattoo of an angel. But they have now put capital M, capital K, capital X, capital E. So, Maddie...
Is that Roman numerals?
No, Maddie.
Oh. Oh my gosh, I feel so dumb.
And they put angel wings on the side of it. So I have a feeling that not only will the survivors do that, but I imagine a lot more people will be getting some kind of remembrance tattoo for them.
And I've seen, while I've been doing some research, I did go through some of the girls' Facebooks, and I just want to say, if you go look at those Facebooks, please don't send the family messages or anything like that. I just was simply there to observe. But if you do want to do something, there is a page for Murphy, and you can donate kind of in honor of the victims to Murphy. And I think the parents of the victims are going to use that money for either legal funds or advocation or whatever. But if you do want to do something, go check out Murphy's he has a new Facebook page that's dedicated to the victims. I and Johnson will go over some of the questions that we have about the case. Does he have a summer job? Do we know that? Have you read anything about him working?
No.
When did he get to Washington? So do we believe that he drove to start his fall semester? He drove his mom's Elantra in August.
No, because he applies to the Pullman Police Department for a summer job.
In August in Washington.
In Washington, I don't know for sure that was in August.
Did he get that job?
No, he was fourth.
It's also been rumored that in August he had first encountered the girls and that they rejected him because we've obviously stated that he doesn't really have very good social cues, and that they did reject him at a brewery. And of course, these two girls have boyfriends. I mean, they've kind of been on and off again, but again, I mean, that is their choice. If they don't want to talk to him, they do not have to talk to him. But this obviously makes Brian very angry. And was this the event that triggered the following events? Again, Maddie worked at the Mad Greek. So did he see these girls out at the brewery and rejected them? And then a couple months go by and he finds that Maddie is working at this Mad Greek. And then he's like, oh, well, now I know where she works. And then did he possibly follow her home? Again, we had talked about earlier that he might not have thought that Kaylee was in the house at the time. And so it is my belief, personally, that Maddie was his victim and that the messages were sent, the unopened social media messages were sent to Maddie.
Say that Maddie was his initial target. It makes sense that he would also murder Kaylee because she's right there. So if Maddie was his target, what is his reasoning for continuing and going to kill Xana and Ethan?
I don't know, other than maybe he didn't think they were in the house, and then he hears Xana up on her TikTok and thinks, "Ew."
I'm like, just let the girl eat her Grubhub and watch her TikToks. Okay.
So the rest of this, I think we've covered enough.
The only other thing, so one of the questions I think, Jones, you actually had put in was, do you think any of the girls were receiving phone calls that morning? Like their phones were ringing and maybe Dylan heard this. And again, if Dylan's in a flight or fight, wait, what is it? Is that
freeze?
Yeah, freeze. She hears these phones and it's probably just re-triggering her trauma response. Like, oh my gosh, like, they really aren't answering their phones. Is this true? Are they dead upstairs? So we don't want to really say anything about Dylan until we get her full story. We don't know. I have not been able to find out a whole lot about her background. So
and that's because they really are keeping it quiet for her.
And they're trying to keep her protected. Yeah, we've covered that he might not have known that Ethan was with Xana, or that Kaylee was there. While parking, we kind of assumed that he was watching the house for lights going on and off, signs of people being awake, TVs being on. He probably would have seen the DoorDash delivery. And does he use that maybe as his in? Like, oh, well, she just got DoorDash delivered or whatever. Maybe they forgot this or the driver came back for that, and he uses that kind of as his in.
But also, that's a signal that someone is awake in that house, so he does not care that they are conscious.
Yeah, and do you think he wants them awake, or do you think he wants them asleep?
I think he doesn't care. I think his motive was his thesis to find out how it feels.
Yeah.
So within 48 to 72 hours, the police have had the opportunity to look at security cameras and door cams throughout the neighborhood. And they see this white Elantra go in, out. Okay. So they immediately say, let's find that white Elantra and let's figure out whose it is. So an APB goes out for all white Elantras. I don't know if there's in Pennsylvania, it's his mom's car. She's from Pennsylvania. It's got a back license tag on it. It does not have a front license tag on it. In Idaho, there's front and back license tags. So I don't know if the police looking at this film were able to say, "Oh, there goes a car. That Elantra's been by, and that's it," because it doesn't have that front license tag on it. That's how they narrowed it down to that white Elantra. So the story is that a security guard over at Washington State hears that they're looking for a white Elantra. And he goes into all his little parking garages and parking lots and takes down the license tags on everybody's white Elantra.
Wasn't he also pulled over after the murders?
Yes, but that's not until a little bit later.
Wait, was he pulled? You mean like
He was
the
not-
hour that he drove back on the back roads? He was
He
pulled
was
over?
not pulled over. He was not pulled over that night.
Okay. I had gotten that wrong. I thought he was. I apologize.
No. BK's car is one of the white Elantras that this guy takes the license tag down. And that with the phone pings, because they've already started looking at phone records, he becomes quickly a person of interest. He doesn't know he's a person of interest. Nobody knows he's a person of interest because the Moscow police are keeping this really close to their vest. So they've been tracking Brian Kohberger for probably at least 5 weeks before they arrested him in Pennsylvania. His dad flies out
To Washington.
to Washington to drive back home with Brian to Pennsylvania for the Christmas holidays. And the car is spotted. It's already under surveillance. So the car is spotted in Loma, Colorado. And then as it drives through the state of Indiana police pull him over twice within 6 minutes of each other. And they walk up to the door. It's on body cam. And so they walk up and, "How are you? What are you looking for?" Blah, blah, blah. Small talk, never ask him for his license, never ask him for his car registration, lets him go. And they pull him over twice in 6 minutes. So I don't know what part of stupid you don't get when you know that you're wanted or you know that you've committed this crime and police are pulling you over. They're not asking you for any identification and just letting you go on down the road.
I mean, if he was sweating at that crime scene, he sure as hell is sweating now.
That's right. So they get home to Pennsylvania. The FBI is on surveillance. They are trying to, number one, just observe him and what he does. And number two, see if they can find any DNA evidence that might link him to the night of the murders. So remember, there's that DNA on the knife sheath button. So for 3 nights, the FBI is observing through their night vision goggles. And on December 29th, I believe, and 4 o'clock in the morning, they see him leave his parents' house. He has on gloves. He has a sack of trash. He walks out and he puts it in the neighbor's trash can.
Come on, dude.
I know. Do you
If
think
you're
he
going to
had,
go through the trouble.
do you think he has any idea that the FBI was onto him?
Oh, no.
Okay.
He's
But I
clearly,
mean, if you're going through the trouble to dispose of the trash elsewhere, at least go a block down the street.
I know.
exactly. So the FBI swarms in, collects that trash, and immediately it's sent to a private DNA company for verification. It comes back that Brian Kohberger's father is a 99.9998 match for the DNA that was left on the knife sheath. So the two are related 99.998%, and that's how they tag that this has got to be the guy.
Well, and did we talk about earlier that originally when they ran the DNA that they had from the scene through CODIS, it didn't show up because Brian was never... I mean, Brian had never committed a crime. He had no reason to be in CODIS or the database where they run national DNA. And I believe, Jones, hadn't the family submitted their DNA to Ancestry?
No.
Oh, because I thought they got that's how they got the genetic match, that the dad was 99.
His dad's DNA was on the trash
Okay.
that Brian took out.
So there's no ancestry here.
There's no ancestry here.
Okay. I do want to touch on, I recently read some of the affidavits. Of course, I've been trying to keep up on the lawyer conflict of interest information, but here are some things that they got out of the search warrant. And again, this just kind of goes to show that he was not very smart. So in the search warrant, they were looking for black nitrile gloves, which is what he was seeing. Like, that's what Dylan said. She saw him wearing black gloves. They find a Walmart receipt. So they go back to Walmart to look at the cameras. And Brian is wearing gloves inside of Walmart. Again, it's like, bro, come on. Another thing that I just think is, it could be coincidence because Idaho, again, has a small population. We're in a somewhat rural area, but there had been a missing woman from Kaylee's small town of, I forget what it's called. We had talked about it earlier. The town that Kaylee and Maddie were from.
Coeur d'Alene.
Okay, thank you. Kaylee, there had been a missing woman from the town, and Kaylee thought that she had spotted this woman at the Walmart in Moscow. And so Kaylee actually made a police report. And we know that Brian bought supplies at that same Walmart.
Not at that same Walmart. At
A different one?
Yeah.
But that is just so weird. Do you think that's just coincidence?
Yes, I think that's coincidence. There's 2 million Walmarts in the country.
Well, that's true. But have they ever confirmed that the woman that Kaylee reported, was she the missing woman?
They had never confirmed that. She was ultimately found dead in a lake.
Oof. Yikes. I didn't expect that answer. Okay, so again, going back to what they had in the search warrant, they also had a marshal's receipt, probably for clothing. They collected the contents of his dustbin from his vacuums. They were looking for hair, all kinds of hair, including the dog hair. They wanted his, like, Amazon Fire Stick or whatever. I don't know why. Maybe to see if he was watching, investigative TV.
How to Get Away with Murder.
Yeah, exactly.
Forensic
I
files.
mean, if they looked at my Netflix history,
Yeah.
I would be suspect.
I'm sure I'm flagged. I've looked at too much shit for too many years. I'm definitely flagged. Speaking of that, they also wanted his computer tower. And I believe that kind of concludes the story. Do you have anything else, Jones?
The only thing I was going to say is to reiterate that Murphy did not have any foreign DNA and there was no blood splatter on him. So he was likely in Kaylee's bedroom through the crime and during the morning. I guess he was sleeping up there. I don't know. But
Poor baby.
without there being any evidence of that, unless that dog is the clue to everything, and that dog hair in Brian's apartment is Murphy's.
Right, which we don't know what they found in the search warrant. We just know what the affidavit for the search warrant said. So,
Right.
And I mean, if it is Murphy's hair, then Murphy is the hero of the story.
That's right.
I
Murphy's
know.
I think is appropriate.
It is
Exactly.
very appropriate. So,
I'm going to read these references real quick. I've watched a couple of shows on Crime HQ, particularly about this Moscow 4. Everything on ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox. I've listened to everything Ashley Banfield has done, and she's the one that interviewed first Kara.
Northington.
Yes, and multiple podcasts, various experts. We've read the newspapers. We've read the obituaries. I've been following the New York Times daily for any of the updates. Facebook, the Idaho Statesman. Those are some of the references. I've read everything I can get my hands on to try and give you guys as truthful of what we think happened as what happened, because there are so many rumors right now you can't really separate fact from fiction. So that's what we tried to do tonight. I hope you enjoy this. And as soon as we know more news, we'll be updating you.
Yeah. Anything else you have to say, Johnson? Any closing remarks or statements?
No.
No, me either. Well, this was a great episode. Jones, you did a really good job of putting this together. She was definitely the lead on this. Tomorrow
Thanks.
we have a special guest that is going to help us break down some of the Delphi information. And so after you listen to Moscow, we should have Delphi out shortly after. And again, we keep saying that Darley will be out soon, but it is really a very challenging case what we've taken on with the Darley Routier case. Right now, we're editing. I've explained it on social media, but we've taken 30,000 pages of court transcripts, appeals, affidavits, search warrants, looking into all of the people that were involved, her law team. It's taken us quite a bit of time to get all of that information condensed into a narrative. So, I know a lot of people are hanging by a thread after the first episode, and trust me, we are trying to get the rest of Darley out. I'm kind of ready to move on for her case. I've been studying her for about a year now, and I think it's time I close that chapter. So, we hope to get episode 2 out, and then the third episode of Darley should be much easier. It's more of our own conjecture, questions, kind of like we did tonight, a less formal episode. So we hope that you guys enjoyed this tonight. We are signing off. Be safe, or we hope to be in your eardrum soon.
Good night, guys.
Bye.